there's been some rumors on the webs that you could be traded to Chicago, and John called them comical. Do you have a word to describe those rumors?
I mean, I don't know why they come out, but like, I don't want to be any place in the world more than here.
I think the reason I differ so much with the 49ers lunatic fringe that's calling for Kyle Shanahan to be fired is I just went through this with Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. For years, he couldn't beat Ohio State, so fans were starting to turn on him, alums were turning on him. They made him take a huge pay cut at one point. It was humiliating because he just couldn't win the big game, and people were calling for him to be fired. And then with one of his least impressive teams, he beat Ohio State. And a few years later, he won a national championship, again, with one of his least impressive teams. The notion that you gotta get better, what are you gonna do to get better, blah, blah. That's not how life works. That's not real life. Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos got blown out in the Super Bowl with their best team. And they won the Super Bowl with their objectively worst team, where Peyton Manning got benched for Brock Osweiler. That's how bad they were. Was Brock Osweiler was seen as better than Peyton Manning. That's the team that finally broke through and won the Super Bowl for them. Two of the best teams ever, the 1990 and 1992 49ers, didn't win the Super Bowl. The 10-6 1988 team did, for whatever reason. That's the way life works. It's crazy. You just take your best shot and you see what happens. This guy says, say what you want about Patrick Mahomes. Every coach in the league would trade their quarterback and their next best player for Patrick Mahomes. That is blatantly false. The Bills wouldn't, the Ravens wouldn't, the Texans wouldn't, Jim Harbaugh wouldn't, for sure, he wouldn't, the Packers wouldn't. Those quarterbacks are ascending. Patrick Mahomes is descending. This is a classic case of the public being behind. The public was late on realizing Patrick Mahomes was great. They're like, oh, let's see him win a playoff game. Let's see him win a championship. Let's see him win a Super Bowl. Let's see him win two. The public was late on realizing Patrick Mahomes was great. And now they're late on realizing that he has declined, which, if you think about it, has, an evolutionary basis. If you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense. Humans and animals are wary of new things. You look at the way your cat reacts to new objects. Or I remember back in the 90s, there was an article saying the internet was just a fad that would pass. So, that kind of thinking has kept our ancestors alive in a harsh and unforgiving world, but it means that the modern human stubbornly clings to old information. Like Patrick Mahomes is still great. People are clinging onto an image of Patrick Mahomes that is like 2 or 3 years late. He is no longer great. And eventually you will realize I am right. Now, it is the internet in 2024, and nobody ever admits they're wrong on the internet, so you won't admit it, but you will know in your heart that I was right. Patrick Mahomes is no longer great. Susan says I go a little bit overboard when it comes to wanting to trade aging stars for draft picks. I think he goes overboard a bit, as you'd basically be switching out the top players every 3 years. Hold on a second. That's not exactly what I'm advocating here. I was happy about the Diamador Lenore signing. I wasn't complaining about the Diamador Lenore signing. Now, if that contract ends up blowing up in our face, so be it. I think it was a good signing. The Juwan Jennings signing, I was clamoring for that. Remember in this offseason, everybody was talking about Ayuk. I was like, no, forget Ayuk. Make sure you keep Jennings. Fred Warner, the first Fred Warner deal, I was totally for that. The George Kittle deal, I was totally for that. So it's not that I want to trade everybody after 3 years. It's that when the production and or injury history and or age doesn't justify the asking price, that's when you gotta cut bait here. For example, Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa already had a major injury. Then you look at his brother, a year or two older, falling apart already. And then I look at what he's asking for, $170 million. And then I look at what you could get for him in a trade. Given all those factors, I would have traded him. And I think I've been vindicated on that. 7.5 sacks. Aiden Hutchinson has 7.5 sacks in 5 less games, dude. In 4 or 5 less games, he's got the same number of sacks as Aiden Hutchinson. He's got less sacks than guys making a fraction of what he's making. So it's not that I'm in favor of trading everybody. It's just I think you got to look at the age, the injury history, and what you could get for him. So I'm not in favor of trading everybody. I don't actually think we disagree, Susan. I think we agree. PD Popoff asks what I think about Nick Sorensen. Well, first of all, Nick Sorensen is an improvement over Steve Wilkes. We know this because if Nick Sorensen was fired, he would have a job in the NFL, whereas Steve Wilkes is, as far as I know, an unpaid advisor at an HBCU. So nobody's knocking down the door to hire Steve Wilkes. Second of all, it was Shanahan's idea to go back to this defensive scheme. And third of all, I would argue a lot of the defensive struggles is attributable to injury and roster construction. I don't know how you're going to hold Nick Sorensen responsible for the obvious lack of speed. And by the way, a lot of times missed tackles is a function of a lack of speed. A lot of times you're trying to make up for the speed disparity by overcompensating. So, is he Vic Fangio? No, he's not Vic Fangio, but he's not a bust. He's a replacement level DC. Now, as you know, I am officially a Dodgers fan now. I put in my bandwagon request last season to officially transfer from the San Francisco Giants to the Dodgers, and I won a World Series in my first year as a bandwagon fan. So I've been following this Juan Soto news very closely. Juan Soto signed with the Mets for $765 million over 16 years. No deferrals, not a penny of deferrals. And Yankees fans were very upset.
Q, that's right, mother. Yeah, I'm taking it personal. We gave you our love. We gave you our fucking heart and soul. It wasn't enough. Go off Broadway to the Mets. You don't want to be on Broadway? And you don't want to be Judge's guy? You don't want to be Judge's partner? No! We're not around.
This is your new home. This is your new home right here. Look at this hole. Right across the street. Look at this fucking dump. Road closed. You chose this piece of shit to be your home.
I gotta tell you, I have a whole new interest in baseball now as a bandwagon Dodgers fan. Our uniforms are amazing, first of all. So pretty. Decoy, he's so cute. Decoy, Otani's dog, adorable. I love it. Love it. A lot of people were critical of my take that Steve Young isn't much better than Brock Purdy. I'm sorry, but the logic of my argument is unassailable, dude. Number one, Steve Young was neck and neck with Steve Bono. Is Brock Purdy at least as good as Steve Bono? I would argue better, but at least as good, yes. Number two, would Brock Purdy have won at least one Super Bowl with Ricky Watters, William, bar none, Floyd, Jerry Rice, Brent Jones, a good offensive line, a defense that included Dana Stubblefield? He's in some trouble, right? What happened to him? Dana Stubblefield, Bryant Young, Richard Dent, Ken Norton Jr., Deion freaking Sanders, dude, Merton Hanks with his neck thing that he does, Merton Hanks at his best. Yeah, Brock Purdy would have won a Super Bowl with that team. I don't think you can. I don't think it's. You cannot deny it. You cannot deny that. That is a fact. I don't even understand how you could even begin to deny that. The logic there is unassailable. Number one, point one, and point two are unassailable. Even Socrates would be like, yeah, you got me. You got me on this one. Aristotle would concede. The logic is airtight. I don't even know what you guys could possibly try to disagree with.